Good morning in the morning. Well, today I want to talk about how a loser becomes a winner over time. And the example that I want to use is Tiny Tim. I don't know if you've heard of Tiny Tim. He was singer, a very, very peculiar singer in the 70s, I believe, around 70s. An old singer, and this guy was very weird, let's say. He was very weird because his singing style was. He used to be a fan of like old music, like maybe 19th century music, late 19th century. Like he would sing songs that he liked, but they were kind of old fashioned for that time, and he would sing at a very high pitched voice. Like really, you can listen to the song "Tiptoe Through the Garden." I think it's called "Tiptoe Through the." Very high pitch, and he has another famous song called "Living in the Sunshine, Loving in the Moonlight." This is a cover, I think. It's not. He didn't write these songs, but his singing style is very peculiar. And his appearance is also very. He used to have long hair, right? And he had a big nose, like a big nose. And he would dress almost like kind of like a homeless guy, kind of. He looked really, really disheveled, right? And then he had this voice, but he could also sing. I mean, his range was wide. I mean, you can hear him sing more like a man, meaning a lower voice, right? Because he became famous for singing high pitch at high pitch, right? You would have to hear it. I mean, to know what I'm talking about. It's very interesting. So this is the guy that I find very inspiring. He also has a song called "Me and Man on the Moon" or "The Man on the Moon," something like that, where he talks about how he struggled to make it, right, and how they would make fun of him. Like even when he became famous, they would kind of make fun of him because of his appearance and his style. This guy was an encyclopedia, man. When it came to music, I mean, when it comes to music, he was very knowledgeable about music from that like old music. He was a big fan of that kind of music, like old school music. And actually, his marriage, he got married to a younger girl. I think he was around 40 or so when he became famous. He married a very young girl, and his marriage or the whole thing was televised. And Johnny Carson, I think it was Johnny Carson or one of these late night shows. So it was one of the most watched episodes. I think that was in the 80s, perhaps around there. I don't quite remember, but you can look it up if you want. And so, that song that I'm telling you about, "Me and Man on the Moon." There's a line where he says, "I I crusaded until I made it, and every time I sang my songs, I knocked on doors, and they would say, 'Don't come back, please. Uh, go away, and don't come back.'" So, but I crusaded until I made it. Yeah. So sing your song, he says. There's nothing wrong with singing out of tune, right? And he actually sings out of tune at that part. So anyway, it's interesting guy. It's very inspiring. Of course, most people will not make it. Yeah, we have to be realistic. But Tiny Tim, man, he's such loving kind of figure. Like I find him very inspiring. When you hear him talk, he actually had a heart attack on stage. One time because he had a weak heart. And then soon after that, he died. but yeah, he seemed like a very sweet guy, maybe a little bit naive. He was religious as well, and I mean, you might not be religious, but the older I get, the more I find value in religion, or maybe you can call it being spiritual. I mean, it doesn't matter which words you use. I mean, to me, it's the same thing. And then the other guy I want to talk about is Robert Crumb, who was another loser. This guy was probably a bigger loser than Tiny Tim. Robert Crumb, man, you just gotta see him. I mean, he even said it. If you watch that documentary, it's called Crumb, and from 1992, I believe, early 90s. He he says, I was he promised himself that he would be famous, and that would be his revenge. Because when he was young, when he was a teenager, like, girls were not interested in him at all. You know, and he and his brother Charles, they were obsessed with comics, with drawing and all that. His brother was actually the one that would force him to do comics and draw and all that. And he says that, well, that was the reason why he became very good at it, because his brother was obsessed with it, and they would play games and pretend that they were running this company. Well, you can watch a documentary, very, very interesting. Even Jordan Peterson, who's very infamous now, well, depends how you see it. He talks about this. He talks about the he says that's his favorite documentary, Crumb, because it tells the story of this guy who, I mean, he was a complete loser, man. And his two brothers, they were kind of losers too, in a way. But he managed, and he came from a very dysfunctional family. I mean, you can see how the mother is in complete denial of everything. I mean, and then the brother is he's taking medication. He's anyway. It's a very funny story, because this family is very weird. I mean, these guys, they were very odd, like, their personalities, especially his brother Charles. Apparently, from what the documentary says, the guy was just weird, just weird. And he says the only thing, he says that I don't wet my bed. That's about as much as I can say for myself. That's his source of pride, that he doesn't wet his bed. Anyway, he was funny. So if you think you're a loser, which most likely you are, don't despair, man, because guys like Crumb and Tiny Tim, if they have a chance, maybe some of us have a chance. I'm including myself, because, well, I don't consider myself to be a loser, but perhaps in the past I've been a big loser in many areas, so I can relate to these guys, because they had all the ingredients to fail, really, especially appearance wise, and they managed to make it. So anyway, that's the lesson for today. Okay. Look up the documentary, man. Crumb is very interesting, and if you can listen to Tiny Tim. Now, I warn you, Crumb can be offensive. His material is very wild, let's say. Especially when he started experimenting with funny stuff, his material is wild. Like, he lost a lot of clients, let's say. Especially women, female clients, because he was wild. He was just wild. Like, there's no one, I mean, I'm not an expert, I don't know much about comics, but this guy was completely wild. I mean, and funny. I mean, to me, honestly, I really admire this guy. I mean, he's still alive, by the way. He lives in France, southern France. But look him up if you're interested. He's quite as John Lennon would say, a working class hero. All right, peace.